Good day, everyone. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sia Zenani, and today I am finishing 6 years of living with HIV. I just want to take you through this short yet very important journey of my life. So, this day, 6 years ago, I got called whilst I was at work. My daughter had gone to the clinic because of the reoccurring sores that she was having. And the doctor who was attending to her looked through her file and decided that she had to do certain tests on her because she felt that we were missing whatever that was making her sick. One of the tests that she wanted to do was an HIV test. So, as a way of moral support to her, she said, let the whole family be tested. So, I was leaving work and going to the clinic for that. Children were tested and they were negative. And she submitted other tests, blood tests, to determine the root cause of the problem. Then we did my HIV test, and the test came back with 2 lines. That's how I found out that I was HIV positive. Surprise. I was shocked, but I'm not a person who immediately reacts to situations. So I have a really bad, delayed response. So even that day, when I was told, I was like, oh, okay. The doctor was like, hey, when are you lying? There's no way that this is your first time to know your HIV status and you're this calm. And I was like, what can I do? Even if I go frantic about it, it's not going to change the fact that I am HIV positive. Went home. Remember, I called a friend of mine, told him what was going on, encouraged me, supported me. I told him honestly because in the clinic I needed to give a name of the person that they would call at the time when I start taking medication. Should I default or not pick up my medication or whatnot, who would they call? So I just thought of a person. I gave them that name, and therefore I had to inform the person that this is what was going on. They did. They submitted my blood to the lab to determine how my CD4 count was and all of that stuff, to determine when would I start taking treatment. Back then, it was before this new rule that everybody who tests positive for HIV must start taking treatment. Then you had to take treatment when your CD4 count is 500 or less. So yeah, I went home and they said they would call me after they get the results from the lab to let me know how far I was, and they did. When they called me, my CD4 count luckily was still high, and I didn't need to immediately start treatment. So I had some time to get used to my new reality before starting to take treatment. But the point of this video is the emotions that I went through. I think that was the most difficult part of the journey. When it finally settled in, that my status had changed. The first one that I remember feeling was guilt, a lot of guilt. I felt I had exposed myself to the virus. I could have done better. I could have chosen better. I could have made better choices. I could have protected myself. The second one was anger. I was very angry at the person who infected me. I was also very angry at myself. I was angry at him for not protecting me. We we were in a very rough situation. You know, at the time when I was diagnosed, what we knew as our marriage was falling apart. It was falling apart because of a lot of things. There was a lot of infidelity. There was a lot of abuse. We were so toxic to each other. And so the diagnosis couldn't have come at a worst time in my life. It came when things were falling apart. I was not happy at work. I was just so not okay. And now this diagnosis, and that made me angry. I was very angry at him. I was very angry at myself. And on top of those emotions, there was the shame. I felt so ashamed of my new status, and I started stigmatizing myself. Went through a lot of self-stigmatization. I started worrying about what people would say when they find out, how people would view me, what people would say about me, you know. I mean, consider myself a well-educated woman who knows a lot of things, you know, and now it just wasn't making sense, you know, and I felt like people would judge me, and that was painful. Then about 2 months after this diagnosis, we parted ways with my ex-husband. And now that added loneliness in the journey, because now it was a very lonesome journey. I was walking it alone with no support, and I was not ready to disclose to people. 6 months after the diagnosis, I decided to inform my mother. I was very scared. I thought she would think that I was dying. I thought she wouldn't accept it. And it was very soon after, I mean, I had publicly and dramatically ended things between me and my ex-husband. So I felt like this was too much for her as well. But I had to tell her because I couldn't keep it a secret forever. So in December of 2016, I sat her down and told her. And amazingly and surprisingly, my mom understood HIV more than I could have ever imagined. She encouraged me. She supported me. She told me I was going to leave. She told me I would see my children through school and varsity and adulthood. And she gave me a lot of examples of people who were HIV positive, who were living with it for years. I was surprised. I sat there looking at her and be like, who is this woman, you know? And I got a renewed hope from that conversation. I decided to commit to being a better version of myself. Started looking after myself. I didn't want to look sick. I didn't want to look like I was having HIV in my body. I started taking care of myself, started jogging, started eating well, you know, committed to that. And now the challenge came when I started with ARVs. My mom is in Eastern Cape, I'm in Gauteng with my children and my helper. None of them know what is going on. I'm fighting this battle inside alone. And between myself, my brother and my mother were in Eastern Cape, and this friend that I told, no one else knows. Well, and my ex-husband, no one else knew. And I was fighting this battle alone. Eventually, I had to go to the clinic, you know, and when I was told that now, when I did other tests, and then I was told that my CD4 count had dropped to below 500 and I needed to start medication, I went on the date when I was supposed to get the medication. I got the medication, got home, and committed to taking it regularly, consistently. The medication made me sick, as I had feared. I was fearing that I might have some side effects from it. And I did. I started getting sick. That's how I got to disclose to two of my friends that live in Gauteng. I dropped the bomb on them, literally. I sent them a text, girls, I'm HIV positive. I started taking medication yesterday. I'm sick. And that was it. I didn't care how they would take it or how shocking this was to them or whatnot. I didn't consider their feelings at all. All I knew was that I was done walking this journey alone. It was too lonesome for me. And I gained a lot of support from them. I gained a lot of love. And they told me that I was going to be fine. They assured me that I was going to live through it. They kept on checking on me, asking how I was doing, how the medication was treating me, and all of that. And I looked back at the amount of time I spent stigmatizing myself, engaging in pity party, angry, bitter, and how much support I costed myself. I mean, had I been vulnerable to them earlier, I would have received the support even earlier, but I costed myself that. But as time went on, I started changing my attitude towards this new diagnosis. This began with a lot of self-forgiveness, a lot of self-empathy. I started reframing things in my mind. And when I began with forgiveness journey, I had no choice but to also forgive the person who infected me. That was my only ticket out of, the misery that I was feeling. And the more I positively looked at my life and the more positive outlook I had on life generally, the better I felt. The more I glowed, the more I became a happier version of myself. And as time went on, I had courage to disclose to my children. This was now, I think, a year and a couple of months after the diagnosis. I sat them down and I told them that my babies, this is what's going on. I first wanted to understand what was their understanding of HIV. And they told me what they had learned at school. They told me what they knew from TV. They told me what they knew from our conversations. And I realized that they knew enough. This was the firstborn and the secondborn. The thirdborn was quite young. He was 2 when I was diagnosed. So I wasn't going to be able to have that conversation with him. So this conversation was between my firstborn and secondborn. And I disclosed to them. And my children supported me in such amazing ways. They started reminding me to take my pills, what would happen to me if I didn't take my pills. They told me how much they wanted me to live. And that also introduced another dimension to our conversations now. We started realistically talking about death, even though they knew and they were assured that I wasn't going to die anytime soon. But we started having real conversations of what would happen to us if we were to die. Who would we call? Where would we go? Where would we live? How would we go to school? And stuff like that. And that kind of conversations, it really showed me how grown and how mature they were in their very young age. Fast forward to 2 days before my second year anniversary with HIV, I disclosed my status publicly in a Facebook post. I talked about it in a very encouraging post, and the point of the post was, guys, Kuyaphileka. Kuyaphileka is a closer term meaning you can live through it. You will live through it. And the point of that message, of that post, was, no matter what it is, you can live through it. And that post opened me up to support, to love that came even from places that I would have never imagined. It also came with a lot of me too. I'm also going through that. Thank you for giving me words to frame it. Thank you for giving me courage to tell people around me. Thank you for for being my voice. I went through such an overwhelming period of support and period of love, period of affirmations from even strangers. And I realized then that it is not what happens to us, it is our attitude to what happens to us that determines how far we go in life. I can safely say that now HIV is no longer a matter in my life. It's no longer an issue in my life. It does not determine who this woman is. It does not determine how far this woman is going. And I can safely say the words that my ex-husband said to me, that who would love you with your baggage, who would love you with 3 children and HIV, those words were true, when they were false. Definitely false, because I have lived to receive so much love. I have lived to receive so much adoration. I have lived to receive such healing love. And in the few years that I have lived with HIV, I can safely say that he was lying. He was jealous. He didn't want me to get out of his trap. He thought that if he discourages me enough and he causes me not to see my worth, I would stick with him. And here I am, 6 years later, healthy, beautiful, glowing, inspiring. And I am telling you that Kuyaphileka, mntasekhaya, you will live through it. I don't care what it is that you have been diagnosed with or that you're struggling with. You do not need to be ashamed of it, number one. Number two, you do not need to live in that trap or in that locked up storeroom of shame and guilt and anger. And number three, there's so much love out there, so much support out there, so many of us that want you to live through it and come back and tell us how we have made it. I hope that this message will inspire you to get out of your ruts, to find ways to live through it. And you must remember that in each and every situation, you always have a choice. You might not like the options presented to you, but you always have a choice. I had a choice to remain in my pity party. I had a choice to remain angry and bitter and ugly, but I chose otherwise. I chose to reach out to the highest self that I can be, to the best version of myself. And here I am telling you that, Kuyaphileka. Thank you.